A trip past cardboard reality. This report starts with me waking up and attaining 1/8 of shrooms from a friend and mixing them with melted chocolate, forming them in an ice cube tray shape. I had eaten nothing previously that day and did not even plan on doing this. At first I had the chocolate, I kept thinking more and more of eating them that day. I was driving my mom's car around, so I had to drop it off at the doctor's office where she worked, so I decided, what the fuck, and went ahead with a new plan. And I ate the shroom cube when my friend was giving me a ride back from dropping the car off. On the ride home, we purchased a whipped cream bottle to do on a whim idea. I held my bottle in my hand, noticing the colors continually gradually getting deeper and more meaningful for some reason, but why, I could not answer. I got home and things in my house seemed different, just in a way that whatever I seemed to look at, my entire field of vision around that thing was glossy, like I was in a dream, and for some reason, it felt like my vision was unraveling, even though it visually wasn't, if that makes sense. So my friend Chris loaded up a bowl and I took about 2 hits of some very decent nugs. I was noticing some small visual distortions while sitting in the kitchen where we smoked the bowl. The glass tabletop was slightly waving and the floor had some sort of motion to it, so I figured this would be a good time to do the can of whipped cream and took one huge long inhale of it and held it a little bit and let it out. My head rushed and I got the feeling of being in a metal room and every sound had a metal ring to it. I felt the nitrous come on more and realized that this was it. I ran down into my basement, the only room in my house that can get pitch black, and went to the far end of the basement, switching off all the lights as I went, saving the last for me to get in a chair and table to put stuff on. I brought down my CD player playing Juno Reactor and Grateful Dead mixes. What came next blew my mind. If you have ever pressed your hands lightly on your closed eyes and have seen colors, that is what it is like. Bright colors started swimming in. In what felt like a few minutes of mushroomed confusion, the visuals grew into distinguishable colored shapes. The most distinct one I saw, I remember seeing a huge boob with legs on it go walking by my field of vision, which was a neon red. I never really had such clear, distinct, and odd visuals on shrooms. Usually it's just colors flying about. Don't ask me why I saw what I saw, only know I saw it. I opened my eyes to see nothing but the same colors and more blackness. I noticed a green light glowing violently somewhere below my field of vision, and I looked down to remember my CD player, which I put the headphones in, and waved the CD player around, watching the tracers of the green LCD light. I would move it back and forth, and it would leave a trail of light just as bright as the LCD light, so it looked like it was one long light, and when it caught up with itself, it seemed to explode, but not really. Hard to explain. I started feeling like something was in the basement with me and watching me. So of course I freaked out and reached for the chain above my head to turn the light bulb on, finding that during my moments of awe, I had mistakenly got out of my chair and moved around. So there I was in the pitch black with colors flying around and waiting for my invisible friend to come out and kill me from the shadows, groping for the light switch and finding nothing but wooden rafters. After a few minutes of die-hard panic, I got the light on and assuaged my fears of being hurt. I decided I had enough of this and went upstairs to the kitchen where I laid on the floor and put the headphones on. I listened to Schmangle, Behind Closed Eyelids, and a few others I can't remember. After being weirded out by the music, I noticed my friend come in and check on me. When I waved at him, he left again. I then put in Grateful Dead into the CD player and put on the song Dark Star, which blew my fucking mind. I went through periods where I would fall into a trance so deep that I would see the colors and they would make my own world, and I got lost in the world and then would remember I'm a person who took drugs. I wouldn't say I had ego death, but it was definitely the closest thing I have ever come to it. I just ceased to exist for a few seconds, then I would come back and look at the clock, only seeing different bright green symbols each time, glowing at me with an almost vicious quality. I started slipping back into this state, but the music changed to China Cat Sunflower, which kinda made it hard for me to slip back into the trance state I was in. When I did, I would keep thinking I would stop breathing and die. I therefore decided to sit up and just listen to the music. When I did this, my eyes fell on the sight of the light from the moon coming in from the windows, and it seemed to splash on the floor and create the illusion that the lit up part of my floor was an ocean that I was looking at from afar. After staring at this for a while, I decided to go into the living room where my sitters had started to play GTA 3 Vice City. I stared at the screen and it looked semi-normal except for the fact that the colors were coming off the screen. If you stare at the lights and see the halo effect, that is what the television screen was doing. I got tired of this and was staring at the Christmas tree, and it looked like it was there in dimensions. I was viewing several different dimensions that came together to form this blob of particles that eventually created a Christmas tree. One of my sitters, Chris, suggested going over to a mutual friend's house, Justin, to chill. I didn't like the idea of leaving, but I did like the idea of seeing as much as possible and exploring. Chris drove over and had to stop at the local Rite Aid for cigs. I decided it would be fun to explore, so I got out and walked in. Everything seemed so normal, but I had to piss. So I walked down the main aisle of Rite Aid, and all of a sudden I realized I was peeking. My ocular vision was starting to really drip and move around to the point that I could barely stand, and I started seeing colors overlaying into my vision. It was odd. It seemed to me that this attribute kinda snapped on like a light when usually when I trip, it gradually comes on. Walking down the aisle and seeing the people, whom all of them seemed to be staring at me, made me feel like they were fake cardboard cutouts, and since I realized this, the universe had enough of trying to put up the charade of reality for me and started coming apart. I made it to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, seeing my own face in dimension sections, much like I did the tree. I stood at the toilet and did my thing while staring at the wall, mesmerized by the way the hard surface was only a clear plastic sheen, and beneath the wall, the colors of the green marble were swirling any way they wanted. I noted to myself that I loved to do mushrooms and left the bathroom. I remember going back up to the front of the store and seeing Chris just making it to the front of the line when I walked down the aisle and forgot where I was at. But that didn't matter because there was a giant stuffed frog sitting on the shelf who seemed to give me all of his life emotions as a plush toy. He seemed to be enjoying it. I laughed at this, and Chris came around the corner and found me and got me out of there since I could not stop laughing. I'm sure that was a sight. One guy pushing another out the door while the later is geeking out as hard as possible so that he's crying. I don't really remember the car ride over, but I do remember getting there and having patterns stuck in the middle of my eyes again. I started getting a really bad mindfuck and could not complete a thought. I started doing one thing and wanted to do another. Everywhere I looked, the patterns started sticking to objects. I was not having fun at this point. It felt like I wasn't tripping out, but my head was full of cobwebs. I started thinking to myself, oh God, what did I do to my brain? I tried to get my mind off of it by listening to Justin's CD Walkman, and Sublime was in it. Bad idea. This normally would have been great, but Sublime is my roommate's favorite band that he would give his right hand for. Lately, my roommate was having a struggle with his decision between a dearly loved girlfriend and staying in college on the opposite side of the state from her, and I started to feel bad for him, understanding completely what he was feeling, which was very despairing. This pretty much put a cloud over my whole night as my mindset was set by the Sublime experience. I tried calling him to let him know I was sorry for how he was feeling, but he couldn't talk, which made me feel like complete shit for some reason. I rode out the rest of the night, slowly returning to reality, making me think of the powerfulness of shrooms. In retrospect, I think doing the whip it right when I started feeling the mushrooms seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think it might have propelled me too far too quick.